All right, we're live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another segment of our Summer Academy speaker series. I'm Meryl. If you haven't been watching any of the prior videos, I'm Meryl. I'm the director of Rainbow Alley. And today we're going to be talking about nature and to go along with our nature themed week that we have been having. So before we get started, I wanted to pull up the survey at the bottom of the screen. And we'll basically, with these surveys, we want folks who are watching these videos to fill out these surveys. And if you're a youth and you fill out both these surveys, it will enter you into a raffle for a gift card. So, free money. And they're not, like, when I say survey, I mean it's like 3-4 questions max. Like, it's not a whole lot. So yeah, and at the end, I'll put a post survey for you to fill out after the fact as well. You do need to fill out both in order to get an entry into the raffle. And the more you participate, meaning the more of these videos you watch and fill out these surveys, the more entries you get. So with that, I want to introduce our speaker today. Oh my God, I'm sorry. I want to introduce Melissa Ivy, who is a fun, tough, two-spirit Taino warrior, a caregiver as a doula, a discoverer, a server of the underserved voice, and some have called her a creative genius. Her passions include helping others through difficult times, joyous occasions, and everything in between. You'll also find her singing melograms up and down the Colorado Front Range and beyond. In fact, in the new world that we are living in, melograms can be done anywhere around the world to anyone you desire. She also works as a musical birth doula. She has 8 years of experience and 22 births. That's quite a lot. She is an LGBTQOT safe. I'm sorry. And I'm sorry. I completely misread that. She is LGBTQOT safe and works holistically with a variety of family dynamics. And lastly, but not least, you can find her and her sisters on the of the Cast Iron Queens performing live music. So hopefully they will be able to get back to the stage in the not too distant future. So welcome, Melissa. I'm sorry, I completely butchered that.
It's good.
So yes, welcome. Yeah, tell us a little bit more about yourself and what brought you here to talk about these things.
Yeah, so the topic, nature is queer, really speaks to me in reclaiming my identity as a two-spirit Taino sibling and reclaiming some of the powers that the patriarchy has really attempted to take from me. So getting back to nature, getting back to myself really called to me. And that's where a lot of the work that I'm doing, music, birth doula, able to write songs, it's from a very rooted place. And so that's why I'm excited to delve a little bit more, talk about that journey. And for me, stepping up in my community, I have to have self-discipline, and the reflection in nature really offers that rest and watering yourself, really accepting the fact that we are one. My mother, adopted mother, Alicia Fall, reminds me that we are all siblings of Mother Earth. And so it is my opportunity to build bridges in different communities and listen to those who have gone underserved for generations now. And not only to point fingers, but to build bridges for the next 7 generations. So that's a little bit more of who I am.
Okay. Could you kind of explain to folks who may not know what Two-Spirit means, what that is?
Sure. A little bit of the history. In native tribes, there were the male, the female, and there were medicine people known as two spirits who from a young age were nurtured to have the balance of feminine and masculine. They didn't have to decide if they wanted to go hunting or if they wanted to prepare the food and tend to the children. Some of these humans and my siblings, identified as two spirits, were the first to be persecuted when colonialism really came to Turtle Island. We saw masculine humans in female regalia. This threatened them. And so I'm really trying to find what it means to be a modern two spirit, to work with my feminine energy. And I always identified and always wanted to know what the men feel and how they communicate and how they talk. And I've really identified with more of this, the brain of a typical male. Now, gender is a relatively new construct. So explaining what a two spirit is opens the gender binary. So this is a relatively new social construct. And so I offer myself fully as human, as sibling, and I'm trying to honor those that were persecuted for being themselves, for being healers. I myself, as doula, sometimes we are forced to gender identify too early, and we start labeling and we start placing things that aren't of choice on our tiny siblings. So my job is to navigate this myself, first and foremost, and understand parts of me that I'm finding new language for, relatively new language for, and to hold safe space and be accountable for my blind spots, and even my language, and being very mindful to how people identify as female, as male, as non-binary. So myself, I found this term and immediately it was a relief. I finally had words for how I had felt my whole life. And I was a whole person. didn't need to be female or male, but could just walk in this world complete.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally resonate with that myself. So I appreciate you sharing that.
How so?
So I recently came out as non-binary myself, and it was a long journey. But once part of it was seeing representation of it that looks like me, and once I was able to see that, I was relieved. So I definitely understand. I definitely understand that relief. Um, so yeah, with the I'm sorry, I totally got lost in my thoughts. So I appreciate you sharing that, and like you explaining like your connection to that. I'm somewhat moved, as you can tell. I'm like a little. um, so yeah. So how do we connect this to nature? You know,
Yeah.
because when people think about gender, um, with non-human beings, they definitely think in a binary sense. So, like, how do we translate this into nature?
Yeah. So, in doing some research and looking at nature, we can see how natural it is for these same-sex or bisexual pairings. So I made a little list here, so I'm going to look at it. It's seen in giraffes, lions, albatrons, which are birds. I had to look that up. Sheep, monkeys, penguins. Most people have heard in penguins,
Mm-hmm.
and even in walrus. So if it were a unnatural thing, as a lot of people use the defense, against acceptance,
Mm-hmm.
it's not natural, is what I've heard and experienced, and some of my family members have even said towards me. If it's not natural, why are we seeing it in so many species? Why are we seeing fish that can change their sex based on the community need?
Mm-hmm.
Is that not natural? Is nature doing something that it shouldn't be? Or perhaps could we open up our minds, and I'll use the word acceptance again. So I also was researching some intersex species. So earthworms and snails are intersex. And I'm blown away by how nature just teaches us to slow down and witness ourselves. And can we identify with feeling sheepish?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that language is used. As a queer person, sometimes it's hard to identify and say, I identify as this. And we can identify with feeling that, but we know in nature to be sheepish is perfectly natural.
Mm-hmm.
And we identify this power of lions, and it was just Leo season, right? So all of us are like in our power, feeling our calling, right? Which we identify with lion and that strong pride energy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's perfectly natural as queer, bi POC, and our accomplices and allies. It's our nature. So I think that's a little bit of how we're bridging this conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, and like the idea that people try to use animals as an example as like why these things are not natural is like really false. And like, I mean, that's something that I didn't know before this. And so I will definitely be putting those facts in my back pocket for, for if anybody approaches me with that.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
the biodiversity, you know, it comes back to all of us being one living organism, that we really need each other.
Mm-hmm.
The fish need the algae. You know, there's so many ways that the fish add to biodiversity and feeding so many other animals, and those animals help the whole ecosystem, you know, even their waste. So a bear eats the fish, even their waste turns into the compost to fuel that ecosystem. The birds eating the berries, you know, they become our natural gardeners. The squirrels, God bless their crazy energy, they're planting trees. This is their nature. So we can look around and identify when we're feeling that high energy, and when we can just collect the acorns and plan a little bit for the future,
Mm-hmm.
like the animals. And we can see the seasons that we need to rest. We need respite. We need hibernation. What are the animals doing? What are the plants doing? How are the tides even? So we are all a part of it and connected. So Mother Earth is always reflecting us which way to ebb and flow. I find myself at times feeling disconnected. Perhaps, Meryl, you can identify with some of these feelings: disconnected, fearful, unrooted, even.
Yes.
The minute I go towards water, the minute I spend time with my garden and my plants, or just go for a walk in my neighborhood, listen to the birds, put down my phone for a minute,
Mm-hmm.
I'm rejuvenated. Nature restores me, it tunes and balances. And I think given enough time, perhaps 5 minutes without your phone, without checking your apps, without checking your email or text, and you're a very important person. All of you that are watching this, you are so important. But perhaps putting your phone down for 5 minutes a day, look at the clouds or feel the sun. Perhaps put your feet in the earth. Perhaps tend to a plant and let it tend to you. And just notice your heartbeat. Notice your breathing. So this is all things that I do myself when I'm blown out, or I've taught too many lessons, or the day has been exhausting. The moon, the light guides me back. And so these aren't things that we have to take a class for. These are things that are very natural to us if we just give it a little bit, 5 minutes. And nature is going to want you for more. Nature
Yeah.
wants you to connect with it. So even the ancestors, you know, they'll send guides to you as well, perhaps if you're open to it, or you just get to enjoy the sunset.
Yeah, it could be as simple as that. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I know that feeling because I get that when I hike. I like to hike, and that is the way that I connect to nature because honestly, I kill plants. All of them. It doesn't matter what kind.
Is that a challenge?
People have challenged me before, and
Okay.
but yeah, I'm not good with plants. But I do there. Yeah, there's just like this feeling when you go outside and you're not checking your phone, especially nowadays because everything's virtual and we're all looking at screens all day. I don't know about you, but like with my position, I'm looking at screens all day. And so, like taking the time to go for a hike, um, sometimes it's even just like me walking to my car because I just don't want to look at a screen anymore. Um, that is super helpful. So yeah, um, it doesn't have to be something as big as taking a hike, but but just yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but I was thinking about outside. That's what I was thinking about. But yeah, yeah. Are there any other like thoughts about ways folks can connect to nature? I know you named a bunch of things that could be indoor and or outdoor.
Sure. I actually have a helpful resource for folks that may be watching this right now in current time and for our future ancestors. Hello. Here
Mhm.
is a resource for you. I'm going to share my screen.
Got it.
Okay.
Let me see once. You gonna do the full screen? There we
Yeah.
go.
How's that?
Yes.
Ooh. All right. Okay, so this was a very helpful slide, and just a few suggestions if you want to take the next few moments to take a screenshot while we talk about it a little bit, or even take your phone out and you can take a picture. Sometimes if you can't get further away and you're just in your house or your apartment, you can sit by a window and notice your surroundings. You can take a walk, as you mentioned before. Maybe there's a favorite tree that you can start developing, poetry with, or doing stretches with. We talked about feeling the grass, feeling the dirt. And there are some tree huggers out there. So if you want to touch a tree or hug a tree, I'm with you. It's cool. And even if you can't get out in nature, your brain can pretend and your body can have the positive effects. So you can imagine the beach or that vacation you and your family took or that warm memory, and your body will respond equally. I love swimming, I'm a water person. So swimming, making sure you get a lot of water and hydration. If you haven't gardened before, there are some amazing resources and some pretty fun groups on Facebook to help you start with some starters or seed swapping, which is pretty fun. So if you want to try your green thumb, feel free to reach out. My partner, Jenna Manchego, has green thumbs, green toes, so we can help you if you're interested in growing your own food. Or perhaps you have land and you need a few volunteers. I know when I cook, it's like a language of love and can be a dance. So you might want to prepare a fresh meal for yourself using fresh foods. And there is environmental and other types of activism. So reach out to some of the resources on the next slide we're going to be offering. You can watch nature films, videos, or shows about nature, or just notice nature and what you already watch. And notice how nature is present in the media or music that you listen to. If you are privileged and you can do things like save up a little bit of money and travel, you can plan a pretty inexpensive hiking trip wherever you are in Colorado or even outside in your home state. look into local hiking trails. Maybe you want to make a day trip out of it and just spend a little gas money and have a little adventure. Some of my friends like the snowshoeing. I myself like the island adventures, but feel free, warm up. Make sure you got those layers.
Mhm.
For those water mermaid Pisces folks, check out raft sharing. There's some pretty cool groups as well that you can share things like stand-up paddle boards, canoes, kayaks, and take a bike ride, go camping, backpacking, go glamping. It's totally cool if you're a little bougie sometimes. Some people enjoy fishing. Make sure you read the laws around you for fishing licenses, of course. And take an outdoor skill or survival class, and perhaps some of these new experiences will surprise you how good you're at. So now we're going to talk about the organizations that you can help or that can help you connect with nature. Some of the local ones out of Denver or in Colorado that I'll just shout out. I won't read all of them, but cityWILD, it's amazing. The Cottonwood Institute, things like Latino Outdoors, Native Outdoors. I myself went to Outward Bound when I think I was 9 years old, which was several years ago. And nationally, reach out to Clear Nature, Venture Out Project, Pride Outside, Out Here Adventures, and go ahead and take your screenshot now or a photo and reach out. We did a campaign the other night for sleeping bags, and in Denver there are some homeless siblings who could use your extra blankets and sheets and sleeping bags and pillows that, you know, they really need some comforting, and they need to know that we care. So to bring it back, feel free to start watching some resources on YouTube, and I can drop these into the chats, possibly, or maybe not. Okay.
That's okay. I'll do it. I got you. Hold on. Let me.
Okay.
Um,
And I'll stop sharing in about 10 seconds.
what I really appreciate about at least like the first like list of things that you mentioned is that they don't include necessarily have to include other people, which, you know, in the time of COVID is really helpful because, you know, a lot of people are feeling isolated and alone because they might not have contact with the people that they want to have contact with. Do you see as connecting to nature as not so much of like a substitute, but just something that could sort of remedy that, and like how so?
That's a big question.
Yes.
It's a really big question.
Mm-hmm.
I can only speak on my experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And having the mentorship to travel to other countries like Haiti and ask community what services they need and be able to meet them exactly where they are, and not only understand them, but be with their land and respect their ways on their land has given me a whole other appreciation for opening my mind. Growing up in America, we tend to be not so culturally diverse and sensitive as some of my other friends who it's very normal for them to travel and not just be in a classroom. So I say alone, give yourself the opportunity to develop a relationship. If you're not a gardener, that's okay. That's not your relationship. Find and give yourself an opportunity to listen. Nature will guide you. And being a queer person, not seeing ourselves in TV and media and movies, sometimes it's really debilitating. And it's a constant reminder that you're not enough, or you need to buy, or you need to purchase, or you need to spend more hours self-sacrificing. And I think nature reminds us that we are perfect right where we are. And nature does not hurry, yet everything gets achieved, everything gets accomplished. And so I think given the opportunity to slow down and be, and as an artist, sometimes it's not about the blossom of the flower. Sometimes it's just about the journey and the growth. And so I know my garden reminds me that some things die. And you loved them, and you really wanted it to come to fruition, just like in life. But it doesn't mean you give up.
Right.
It means you follow the things that serve you. So I think I've had a lot of time, because of my privilege and because of the community that supports the work that I do, to teach, facilitate, and then take my respite in nature. But it's a clear boundary. And this is something that, Meryl, we were talking a little bit about. Taking the time to rest and breathe, and we revisit it a little bit, is really self-accountability. So as queer people, as people of color, as allies and accomplices, we're taking time to do inventory.
Yeah.
And sometimes it involves shadow work, which is a whole other layer of alchemy and composting. So the garden will take this dead plant that we talked about, and it will reuse, it will recycle it, it will disperse it. So I want to talk about something really cool real quick and kind of switch it up.
Yeah, go ahead.
The mycelium. Do you know how cool mycelium is?
What is mycelium?
I'm talking mushrooms. I'm talking fungi. All right. Mycelium has the power to do micro remediation. I wanted to slow that down for Kendra. Micro remediation. Microremediation is alchemy. It takes what is not helpful and useful in the soil, and it makes it transferable by a network that can communicate thousands of miles away.
Oh.
And it has these it has these webs that cross lands and lands. And so they'll talk to each other and say, we need more iron. And then through this network underground, through rivers and lakes, through trees, through the root system, through spoliation, it'll get the resources that it needs over here.
Wow.
And it'll talk to each other and say, what do you need over here? So humans have recreated this thing called the internet, that if you learn, and I dare you to just watch a fungi video, watch a vice video or something, if you have a short attention span, just look up something, 5-minute video, and nature figured out how to communicate over thousands and thousands of miles to find the need and fill the need and share resources. This is what we're doing now, Meryl and Kendra. Mm-hmm. We're not in the same room. We're maybe hundreds or dozens of miles away, but we get to share the intellectual wealth and knowledge that I need and that you need.
Mm.
And so my partner got me into mushrooms, and I just think they are amazing. I suffered a brain injury last summer, and I use lion's mane, which is this beautiful mushroom.
Yeah.
And we ride it, and I was taking the supplements, and then we would also cook it up and grill it. It's a great substitute for steak or chicken. And it looks like the brain. You cut it open, it kind of has this similarity in this beautiful network. So nature is showing us, if you need this for the brain, eat this. Walnuts. They're so amazing for the brain. And they look like a little brain before you crack them open. So I just think nature is showing us what we need for medicine. And I can't stop learning enough about it.
That's really interesting, because I never thought about nature being that obvious, right? That's really cool. Yeah, that's fascinating. Okay. So in this world where we have created these networks with each other virtually, how can we as a community take care of ourselves? Like how, as a community coming together, not so much individually.
Yeah.
And can it involve nature safely at this point?
How can it not involve nature, I think, at this point?
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah.
I think it's no coincidence that the current conditions this time in space, August 6, 2020, we are currently under still a pandemic where people are dying every day, and people I know, people I love. And Mother Earth, the lungs are suffering. Her lungs are suffering in the Amazon, the air quality. The industry is taking more than we're giving back. We are taking and taking from our mother. And so she reflected back to us. And when I sit with elders, when I sit with medicine people, and I'm really asking for a reason why all of this is happening, that's the answer. So how can we take care of ourselves? How? And you said as a community, I wanted to quote your words, as a community, we take care of our mother. Mother will take care of us. We don't need to worry. If we live today the right way, you don't have to worry about tomorrow, in the words of Jane Wynn. And every day, if each of our community member is just staying in their lane, this is a really common theme for me this week. Stay in your lane. It's your race that you're running. If you are a community activist leader, it's okay to hold people accountable and look over and make sure that your friends are with you. And at the same time, don't let it trip you up. So it's community accountability. And at the same time, Meryl, just by you stepping into your role and into your power, you are helping the community by you resting when you need to rest and getting that first cup of coffee before you take my call next time. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
That is community love and self-love. So the
Mm.
more each of us fulfill that role from a full place, that is community love and accountability. And that will cause a strong community. And I will use I statements. If I show up to this meeting with less than I'm fully capable, or I show up to one of my doula clients
Mm.
less than my 100%, I'm no longer serving.
Mm.
And so the rest, the food, the water, knowing what your body needs, that's a natural thing. You need to scream, and I'm using like very light and kind words, but if you need to scream and go into nature, Father Sky will open up and hold that container for you and not take it personal. If you need to bury something, if you need to burn something, if you need to have something in your life collapse, Mother Earth will take it. She will use it, use that fire, use that ash, use that coal, and reuse and build you something even better. So this is what I'm asking people to lean into for your community. So take your hikes, take your rest, do something that is comfortable to you, and also be a stargazer. You know what I mean by that?
No, I was going to ask you what you meant by that.
Be in wonderment. Like when you're in awe of how many stars there are. There's no Netflix fee for that. There's no Hulu subscription. There's no contract. There's no ticket. There's no entry fee. You got to be out by this time. No attire required. So that's what I mean by that. Be a stargazer. Live in wonderment. And the flip side is that shadow work.
What do you mean by shadow work?
What do I mean by shadow work? There are parts in each and every one of us that needed more love, required more attention, desired something that was unfulfilled in all of us, each and every one of us. If we can walk into that fully, look at it, pull it out of the closet. I use the word facing the boogeyman. That takes a lot of bravery. That takes a lot of courage. And on the other side is the light, is the power, is the rebirth. And so we don't have in our society ceremonies to celebrate each other for these pinnacle moments. Maybe you weren't celebrated. I know I wasn't. Maybe a queer person who is trans or identifies as non-binary or doesn't even fit into the language that we're even using today. Maybe you're so far in the future that you don't even have language for what we're talking about right now. You are my future ancestor. You are who I'm talking to. That belief and that connection, you will find it in nature. You will find something that you connect with. So that shadow work, I've had to write letters to 7-year-old me. I've had to write letters to 14-year-old me. I've had to apologize to 25-year-old me. I've had to take accountability for wrecking myself for years. And so that shadow work and stepping in, it's no longer your parents' fault. They did the best they could. Or maybe they had no skills. At a certain point, when you step into your power, you find forgiveness. You ease your heart. Maybe they're not your best friend. Maybe they're still not invited to your holiday or your birthday party. I see you. That boundary is okay. But to ignore it, it just brings up pain. And I'm speaking from my experience. I have just brought myself pain. So when I've had the, ovaries to walk through it with power and look at my villain or take accountability for being my own villain and forgive myself, forgive my perpetrator, forgive the part of me that was victimized, and in ceremony protect myself, call in my sisters, my siblings, my brothers, my protectors, seen and unseen, ancestors, divine, future and past, so that I can fully reveal the light. And then do it all over again. Next season, and next season, and next season. So you're never done with shadow work. You're never fully in the light. The moon is never fully full before it starts transitioning. So even when we're full, transitioning into something else.
Right.
When we're empty, we have the opportunity to be filled up. So welcome to my talk on shadow work.
Wow. That sounds like very deep work and actually kind of similar to the work that I've done before in working like with trauma survivors. Except I feel like it's like a slightly different approach to it. They're both intense, but wow. Yeah. That's like that must involve like a lot of self-reflection. And just, I'm an introvert. I live in my head. So like, that sounds like a lot of internal work that is just exhausting. And like I can see by doing that work, and then going into your garden, and trying to replenish from all of that work, how it's a cycle, and that I don't know, it's really powerful, but it just sounds like so much work. So much work.
It's what's easy not to do is, or what was the saying? What's hard not to do is just as easy to do. So for me, continuously sweeping it under the rug and sweeping it under the rug was harder than just dealing with it bit by bit. And that was my journey. That was my choice. And I needed to live what I didn't want to get to where I experienced a slice of what I wanted. And then a little more and a little more. And I'm not there yet. But I'm grateful for what I have and where I am. I'm grateful for every flower in my garden, even if you don't make it. It's the balance. And being a birth doula and a death doula, I'm walking so much in between life and the other side of something that we all keep defining as something different. but possibly could it be the same? We're all here in the same place. Could it possibly all be the same? I have no idea.
Yeah. Just like,
But for my time on Earth School, my commitment is accountability and evolution. I think that's all our duty to ourselves. Nature, spirit, your highest self. If none of these words apply to what your beliefs are, your highest version of self is waiting for you. And it's here right now. And I think nature shows us that needs a little love, water, sunshine, very, very common things, oxygen, very simple. If we break it down into science and we want to go into the science realm, simple, carbon, oxygen, very, very simple. Very, very few things that we all have in common with the stars, with the plants, with each other. So if none of the spiritual words or mysticism is resonating with you and you're a person of science, I love it, because science is showing us the exact same thing that the ancestors and the ancient ones had the knowledge of. It just maybe didn't fit a colonialism, patriarchal filled definition of medicine or healer or identity. And so we are future ancestors. That's one in the name of one of my projects. And I use this term because if we treat ourselves as if we are important and we follow that path, our children's children's children, and I don't mean this to be exclusionary if you don't identify with having a traditional family. I am not a birthing human myself, but you can walk in this world being mindful for your niece, for your nephew, for your cousins, for your sisters, for the future ancestors. So if we could all treat each other and treat ourselves with that gentleness, we'll look back in our 100 years if we're gifted with that pride, that lioness power. But it takes each other. Companion plants are a thing. We need each other. We grow better when we're together. We grow stronger. Your nutrients help my nutrients. My belief in sustainability and endless amount of resources infiltrates some people's ideas of scarcity and me, mine. So I thank you for being a companion plant, Meryl.
Well, I appreciate you being mine.
We'll keep each other alive.
So one thing that you had mentioned, well, before we went live, that I thought would be interesting to bring into the conversation is conflict resolution in nature. And like what is that? What does that look like?
Yeah, nature can be ruthless, right? Like plants can just take over a whole garden and like totally conquer and domineer. So that's part of our nature, right? And we also, to touch back on the companion plants, we see when we do the Three Sisters, which is corn, beans, and squash. I did, I wish I could take you outside right now, but I did a little experiment in my garden, on my yard. And I planted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different stalks of corn that were all doing wonderful. So I replanted them, I transferred them, and they were all doing amazing.
Yeah.
And the one at the very far end, in between, I didn't put any beans or squash.
Mm.
And then I put one bean. And then I put a bean and a squash. And then I put bean, squash, and corn.
Mm.
So I was experimenting and seeing what nature would do. Now, my elders told me what was going to happen. And nature responded. The corn that didn't have any companion, no beans, no squash, it died in 3 weeks. And mind you, everything was getting the same water, same sun, same song, same love. It died. The second one started to do a little bit better, but not by much because it only had one companion plant.
Mm.
Then it progressively started getting greener and greener the more it was surrounded by the beans, the squash. And then we took a little help and guided the beans so it didn't take over and just take over the corn. And it's growing beautifully and healthy. And we have like 2 corn, husks coming out. And so we need each other. We need companion plants. We need community. And sometimes we need a little outside gardener to come and just make sure we're not, what's the word? Suffocating each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, so.
That's cool. And so, like, with that example, and thinking about maybe like a less cultivated space, you mentioned like, sometimes species, like certain plants just like take over. Like, what does that then mean for the relationship between those plants?
Yeah, I think as a gardener, sometimes it's our executive decision to break out our machetes and know that for the greater good of the rest of the garden, we need to be a little ruthless and hold that plant accountable. And sometimes we need to pull it out by the root. And sometimes we need to start over. And sometimes we need to till everything and dismantle it and follow what works. So I don't know, can we be ruthless and compassionate at the same time?
Oh my goodness. That is quite the question. That I do not have the answer for. Trying to get all philosophical.
I know people I think too much, so.
I was like, I don't think I have the brain capacity to process that right now. Yeah, so I'm just looking at the time, and I'm wondering if folks watching have any questions, any comments. You can put anything in the comments and we will be able to see it and address them. So if you have any burning questions about what we've talked about something that you want to know about that we have not talked about, please feel free to put it in the comments. In the meantime, I'm gonna put up Melissa's contact information for folks. Okay. So you can contact her with questions that you may have for her after this live ends. So I'm going to give it a couple of minutes. And if we don't have any questions, we can start to wrap things up.
Okay. I would like to share a big dream of mine that help manifesting. I'll say
Mhm.
it in 30 seconds because I'm long-winded. I would like to do a summer camp for Native and Indigenous and by POC people and
Mhm.
our young accomplices. I would like to do a summer camp to celebrate and introduce ceremony and rituals. I would like to continue to be the bridge in our community to teach true life skills.
Mm.
I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I know it's going to happen. And I know
Mm.
with people like Meryl and Kendra coming together in our community bit by bit, we can celebrate each other.
Mm.
And I feel very blessed to be so supported. And I hope you're watching out there, if you're struggling, whether it's with your identity, with your living situation, or any part of your life, I hope you do reach out to these community leaders, these community members, and these amazing organizations that are here for you with resources, with understanding, and with compassion.
Mm. Yeah. So I do not see any questions in the comments. So I am going to, I guess we can start wrapping things up. Did you, I mean, it sounded like those were kind of your final words, but if you have anything to add to that that you feel like would be helpful to youth, especially during this pandemic that we're going through.
Yeah. I would have wanted to hear when I was a, um, let's just say, spunky youth, to dare to dream
Mm.
and don't get stuck in a season.
Mm. Yeah.
And life is full of tides that rise and fall. And don't be swept up too much by the undertow. Release, call out to your highest self, trust in your power.
Mm.
That's what I wanted. That's what I would have wanted to hear. And I'm excited to connect with more community. So please do reach out. I'm here for you.
Awesome, y'all. And beautifully said. So as I mentioned before, we're doing a pre and post survey for our raffle. So I'm putting it up here for those of you who are watching. And I really want to thank Melissa for joining us today and, you know, being so open and vulnerable with us about her experiences and what she has learned from nature. I also want to thank Kendra, as always, for interpreting for us this evening and basically for the rest of this summer for us. She is from Rain Frog Interpreters. She's great. So thank you, Kendra. So with that, we will keep it clean, queer, and under control.